The high-grade Gelgoog Menace Luna Maria Hawk Custom is the 5th Gundam Seed Freedom release that I have ranked Platinum tier. It honestly feels a little bit ridiculous at this point, but it really does sum up what Bandai themselves think about and put into the Seed releases. Nowadays, it's a little bit rare that we get non-Gundam style designs, so to see one with such an amount of love, effort and ridiculous engineering poured into it is an absolute joy. Now first off, I will mention this kit isn't 100% perfect. It does lack a little bit in the color accuracy department, especially when it comes to its thrusters, and a lot around on the backpack, kind of like the Rising Freedom Gundam. But this is a kit that 100% makes up for that. Aesthetically, this is 100% the nicest looking Gelgoog we have ever seen, and if you're a Universal Century builder, it must be pretty painful to look at something this resplendent when the UC Gelgoog is lost entirely to time. The level of detail on this is incredible, and like I mentioned, it is just so nice to see non-Gundam designs get the full premium high-grade treatment. When it comes to the accessories inside the box, this comes fully loaded. A ridiculously fully outfitted backpack that is a little bit color inaccurate, I will mention. A whole bunch of choices when it comes to the melee weapon being the halberd, 2 choices of long-range rifle, a completely unique shield, the likes of which I have never seen before, and a tiny little something that's so simple but revolutionizes high-grade Gundam. Finally, when it does come to the articulation, usually when we see something bulky and almost Xeon-esque, we usually don't get too much when it comes to overall articulation and posability. But this right here, the Gelgoog Menace, breaks that mold entirely, being one posable, outright ridiculous looking articulation machine. Like I mentioned, this is the 5th Platinum tier Gundam Seed release so far, and it totally deserves that tier. Hey, what is up everyone? Welcome back to another review, and today I'm taking a look at the Gelgoog Menace Luna Maria Hawk Custom, and of course this is from the new Gundam Seed movie, Gundam Seed Freedom. As always, I got this right here from those awesome people over at Hobby Link Japan, so if you want some gunpla all of your own, then check out that link down there in the description. Now let's get right on into it. So first off, jumping right on into the aesthetics, and I have to say I am blown away. Now first off, this is not entirely perfect. It does have some color accuracy issues and some sticker issues we'll mention a little bit later on, but considering what it is, this is ridiculously impressive. It's not that often these days that we actually get a very nice high-grade mobile suit that doesn't bear the name Gundam or the standard Gundam look. This definitely, when it comes to a classic franchise release, feels very refreshing. Overall, the details are great. Color-wise, like I mentioned, there are some stickers. I did not use them in this build, and I didn't panel line it either, but it's still incredibly impressive looking. What's also pretty cool is the backpack is removable. It is a single point attachment, so compatibility may be a little bit of an issue, but for the rest, or at least for the next part of the actual aesthetics, I'm going to take that off so you can see the mobile suit itself. So there we go, there is the Luna Maria Hawk version of the Gelgoog Menace, out of box with next to nothing done to it at all. Actually, the only sticker I used was the one on the mono eye, but besides that, this is as straight built as it gets, and it still looks incredible. Overall, if you do like yourself a little bit of a, I know it's a weird thing to say, but a Xeon-esque mobile suit, this will give you that feeling through and through. The color scheme, the curvy, pointy nature, and the bulky aspects of this particular mobile suit really do harken back to the classic Gelgoog and the classic Zaku. However, compared to what you'd get Gelgoog-wise from a Universal Century high grade, this really has all the modern day trimmings. I didn't actually get to film the build on this particular kit because I was sick at the time. That is also why it is straight built and not panel lined or anything like that. But the build here is pretty much exactly what we would have seen with the rest of the Seed Freedom line, as in it has the absolutely phenomenal joints, solid plastic on plastic build, and it's got detail where it needs it. It is incredible to look at. Even though I haven't panel lined it, the panel lines are in there, some tiny minute detail like the piping on the face. However, there are some color issues, and you may not notice them at first because, well, the parts are still kind of color separated, like these booster thrusters on the sides of the legs. Anyway, jumping into the 360-degree spin so you can see everything about it yourself in case there's something that you want to see that I forgot to mention. Overall, large mobile suit, lots of nice pointy aspects. The seed version of a Gelgoog is definitely a little bit Zaku, a little bit Gelgoog when we're speaking in a traditional sense, but overall this is one stylized and stylistic design that just looks so cool. Nice part separation like I mentioned, not fully part separated, but it still looks incredible, especially the grey recessed vents in the chest which are coming from the intersections which house the joints. The details are both sharp and fine, and overall, this is a nice high grade. So now a little bit of a side-by-side comparison of the high-grade Gelgoog Menace beside the official art for it. And as you can see, for the most part, it's almost all the way there. The most noticeable feature, of course, is the wing is lacking a lot of the color. Stickers are included for that, but besides that, on the actual unit itself, it's really only subtle things like we've got some extra white and grey up on those clavicle armaments. There is pink inside of every single one of the little thrusters. The thruster on the front skirting seems to be designed somewhat slightly differently as well. And there is that kind of pink color inside of all of the verniers. That's underneath the armor, on the side skirt armor, so pretty in the shoulder armor too. So there's a lot of places we are missing that pink. These are, however, quite subtle, and the main body gets away with looking pretty much 95% color accurate. Now, as we've seen, the color separation on this particular model kit is incredible, like the face piping right there inside of the chest, those little pieces up on the shoulder, all of the various little thrusters and stuff, they all look great. But of course, there are some aspects which aren't 100% color accurate. But as for the plastics we have in here, these are very, very nice. The kind of magenta, or whatever you'd call this kind of very dark shade of red here, this really harkens back to the Red Comet himself. But the overall color scheme is pretty much like we would have seen time and time again, but looking very, very nice again. Would look better lined up. Now the stickers in here, obviously the biggest issue. This is a massive sticker sheet. I'm not sure if it's the exact same size or a little bit bigger than the Rising Freedom itself. The wing parts, which you can just see here, those are absolutely critically bad. But as for the actual mobile suit itself, it's mainly just these parts for inside of the thrusters. Those ones right there, those are for inside of the thrusters on the side skirting armors, and these ones right here, these are the ones for on the sides of the legs to change the lower aspects of these into the grey and the pink. There are no stickers included for these little clavicle weapons right here. Those, if you want them to look the color you want, you will have to detail them up. But yeah, again, the wings right out of box are just in black, and they're not really meant to be in much black at all. They're meant to be all of these colors that you're seeing right here. That's the actual image of the high grade right there, so you can see what you're supposed to be looking at, and this is what we get. However though, I do like this subdued look, so I'm quite happy with what I've got right here. So as for those model kit sins, as in the mold lines, seam lines, and nubs, for the most part this is extremely good, like we're seeing from most modern day kits. The biggest mold line I did notice is the usual offender right here on the upper leg. That little bit of a line section right there that goes across the thigh sometimes on some kits, but besides that, there's nothing hugely noticeable. All the seams have adopted that newer kind of style where Bandai have kind of doubled down on the seam and made the seam itself recessed, so it means you don't really notice it. It just looks, well, like part of the armor separation, which is very nice. And for the most part, the nubs towards the front are non-existent, and towards the back you will get some along those particular lines, just like so. But again, these are to the back underneath armor parts, so very nicely designed, like I mentioned, like Bandai tends to do with most modern high-grade kits, so pretty good. So jumping into some size comparisons, and there it is side by side with an average size Gundam. So as you can see, this is a big old beast of a mobile suit. So jumping now into a size comparison, there's it beside two Seed Freedom high grades, being the Rising Freedom on the left, the Immortal Justice on the right. So as you can see, it is quite a bit taller. Also from the same movie, there's the Real Grade Force Impulse Spec 2, as well as the Black Knight Shiva. Beside a few more kits now, there's the high-grade Aerial Rebuild and the high-grade Gundam Barbatos, high-grade Gundam Exia, high-grade Gundam G-Self, and beside a couple of red mobile suits being the Real Grade Sasbi and the high-grade Daryl Balde. So when it comes to the accessories that come included with the high-grade Gelgoog Menace, this is everything that we get inside of it. First off, we've got that backpack, which we've briefly taken a look at already. We've got the Magnus Gladius Beam Halberd, as well as two variants of the handle for using with it. And speaking of two, we do have two types of long-range weapon. That is the Prototype Advanced Railgun, as well as the Enhanced Beam Rifle. Next up then we've got the shield, which is the Refulgence Beam Shield. And finally then we've got this thing right here, which might look like not much at first, but this is ridiculously cool and something I have never seen before. High grade has evolved. Anyway, let's check everything out. So when it does come to the accessories with this kit, there is only one real disappointment, and that is the lack of any kind of dynamic hands in here. All we do have is the standard holding hands, those kind of ones with the block hole through them, and no options, so when it is in dynamic poses, these do fall a little flat. So next up in here, we've got the backpack, and although this does have some mild issues when it does come to color separation, it's missing parts in the wings, these little fins, in a whole lot of places, this is still an incredibly nicely designed backpack. Bandai definitely didn't phone it in when it comes to the overall design. The wings can move in and out just like so. We do have some nice, simple color separation on the weapons, however, you know, they are not fully color accurate, but they still do look extremely, extremely good. This one has a little bit of a sliding mechanism. It can move back like that, as well as up like that. I assume this is the stored position. And then we've got ball joints right here, and this little rotating section right here. Now, this isn't just like a peg in a hole. It actually has a little bit of a locking mechanism too, so it cannot move too far. So it has a locking position here and a locking position here, and it can move in between them both. We also do have a whole moving aspect to this little section right here as well to bring the backpack up into an almost striker pack kind of layout. When it does come to the attachment on this, it is just a single peg hole kind of thing like this. So it isn't the standard backpack adapter, and there isn't an adapter included in here either. So the kits that we would have seen from Freedom so far, well, they all have the double hole attachment round back. So I'm going to go for something that has a single point just to see if it does work with these. More than likely this has been designed for working with like Zaku's and mobile suits like that. I've got none of those handy, but can this actually fit into something like this? Nah, it does not fit at all. So if it won't work with that, I doubt it will work with something like the Strike either. Getting the backpack attached on is super simple. It's just a peg into a hole. It locks in perfectly. It doesn't move side to side because of the kind of squarish design of the whole rack and rig around it. And when it is attached, it doesn't actually make this too back heavy. Unless you've got it just barely teetering, it won't fall over when you attach this on. It's a good hefty mobile suit, and it can deal with a nice big hefty backpack. And that just means it is time to get this on a little bit of a stand. So before I actually get this onto a stand, I will mention one thing right here, and that is this. So I thought this kit was missing a part round front. I was actually scouring the manual to try and see what was actually missing from the build down here. Also, usually when I do complete a kit, I do show them to my wife, and her immediate reaction when she saw that was like, oh, it's a Gelgoog. But yeah, I don't know what this is. Is this like a new attachment for a brand new action base or something? Because we got, well, the 3mm right here, which this attaches into. And that one up front kind of looks like it might be a bit of a locking mechanism, maybe for a new kind of stand that will stop something rotating while in a pose. I'm not necessarily sure. I know Bandai is releasing some new stands sometime soon. They did release this one right here, which I haven't gotten around to building yet, the Action Base 7, which is more of a standard kind of stand than what we would have been seeing from them before. Something you can actually move around while it is built. But from what I'm seeing right here, there is no kind of attachment like that. So either this attaches into some other kind of mobile suit, or we're getting a brand new stand somewhere down the line. But that is definitely something I've never seen before. But anyway, onto the weapons. So in proper classic Gelgoog style, we do have this double paddle halberd right here. This comes with two alternate handles. That is this tiny little shorter one right here, and this longer one right here. They're essentially the same. As you can see, the handle is identical. There's a little bit of a slot in this one, probably for storage. And this one just has these extended aspects, which I'm wondering if they're meant to be in white or not. It's actually kind of hard to tell because the whole thing looks kind of like a light gray in the manual. Getting this weapon attached is the usual sandwich hands routine. That means you just pop off one half of the hand from the other half of the hand, which is the two slices of bread. And this is the somewhat loose rolling around hand that goes in the middle. Then just close it all up like so, and it is a little bit of a balancing act to get it attached in because there isn't really any pressure holding in the halberd per se. And that does mean it is a little bit of a loose hold once it is in there. Even with full squeeze pressure, this still does kind of move around. So I can imagine it is it's a bit of a nightmare in some poses. I don't know why Bandai do this. With something like this, it might have actually been a good idea to use a little peg hole like this and have a little bit of a peg in the hand. It is, well, could be better. Besides the grip though, it does look nice enough. It is just a standard handle, standard pink blades with that kind of paddle-esqueness to them, but they have been nicely designed. If you notice in cloaks, we do actually have a nice sculpt to the blade on this that almost looks almost diamondy, and it isn't just flat on the back end, it also has a little bit of bevel there too, so it catches the light in a very nice multifaceted kind of way. So it will look good in poses if it doesn't rattle out of the hands on you. When this is not in use, it can be stored on the mobile suit, but you don't necessarily have to, well, you don't store this version right here, but you don't necessarily have to pop off the beams. Usually with a beam saber, you pop off the beams, then you store the handle. In this case, you can just actually take this away. I will also mention though, you can put the beams onto the smaller version of the handle if you want to, but the smaller handle, that just basically attaches around back onto this little peg on the waist section, just like so. Attaches on perfectly easily, looks good, and there's a little bit of a view from the front. Now this right here is a little bit of an aside, but actually attaching this on reminded me of it. During the build, this was one of the nicest aspects that I thought about this particular kit. Just look at the inside of the waist unit. Usually that's just bare down to the grey parts, but they've actually added in some nice red detail with this little almost cup-like section that attaches on in there. That really does give it a nice, finished, super armored kind of look. I love that sort of, it's pretty much hidden, but they put that extra detail and quality in there. So next up in here we've got the shield, and this is quite the unique looking shield. This is the Refulgen's Beam Shield. As you can see, it's kind of a little bit of a combination of a beam shield with the nice effect parts inside there, as well as a bit of a physical aspect as well. Around back it looks like this, so you can see there is some effect parts slotted into it. We do have this little handle section right here which attaches into the arm. So I will mention this is in its deployed state, so I'm going to do this a little bit in the reverse way, and let's start with this and then we'll store it afterwards. So when it comes to attaching this shield right here, I kind of just went with gut instinct at first and tried to throw it onto the back of the arm, but was having a little bit of an issue. Then I took a look inside of the instructions, and apparently attaching it on like this, well, it looked like at first, is only for when it's in its stored state, and when you're actually using it, it pops into the hand just like so. So it's almost held at a little bit of a punching angle. Depending on the way you angle the arm, you can actually get it into a nice defensive position like what we're seeing right here, which does make sense and is definitely a useful kind of angle to have a shield at. But then I decided to try it on the back of the arm again, and it did work out. Just it can kind of clash a little bit when it is attached on like this with the shoulder armor somewhat, but otherwise an incredibly nice looking shield. So next up in here we've got the enhanced beam rifle, and this is nice and detailed. It is made out of a whole bunch of little individual parts, which is nice. It's nice to see a beam rifle that does have some nice part separation. However, I will mention there is one little bit of an issue when it does come to the color accuracy. The sight section up here up top is meant to be in white with a little bit of a shiny bit inside of it. I've got the shiny bit inside of it, but we are missing the color accuracy on the white. That's something super easy to paint, so I guess it's not really the biggest deal. Moving parts wise, we do have that standard swinging side to side handle, so it can be held with two hands. So again, this weapon attaches exactly what we saw with the halberd. That is the sandwich style. You open it up and you stick the handle into the hand. Now this is absolutely perfectly flush. It's absolutely exquisitely perfect. So this does hold on with no wiggle. Throw the back on, attach it on, and this is one very, very nice rifle. Again, it is missing one bit of color accuracy up on the lens section up top, but besides that, it does look incredible. It's a nice take on the classic Xeon rifle with that cool kind of seed spin on it. Very, very nice. And that is when we come to this little thing right here, which to me is an absolute gunpla revolution. I've never seen anything like it before. It may have existed before, but I've never seen anything like it. So that gets us right onto the storage of this particular weapon. You just pop it off. Well, a little bit better than that right there. So what this basically does is solve a bit of an age-old high-grade Gundam conundrum, and that is, how do you keep a rifle looking like the rifle should look while also having a bit of a peg to attach it on to wherever it does attach onto? Because usually we've got either a peg that sticks out permanently or some kind of flip-out peg, which obviously takes a little bit more engineering. And this is basically it. It just slots into a hole in the side of it like so, and then attaches around back on the butt skirt like this. It holds on perfectly, elevates it above the halberd, which is stored back there too, and this is just a great design. It works so well. So if you're looking for a long-range weapon which is a little bit on the thicker side, then that's this right here. This is the Prototype Advanced Railgun. Now this is a nice chunky weapon. Again, very nicely designed. We've got some nice panel lines on there, so paneling this up, it will look fantastic. but I will mention once again we are missing the detail around the sight. So that is both the shiny bit as well as some of that maroon. Maroon, actually it's straight up red. It looked a little bit maroon or darker in the instructions. So that is what is meant to be attached onto it. It's easy to paint the red. The blue part a little bit more difficult. You could probably get that with a bit of a Gundam marker, or you could just use the included sticker. As for moving parts, we've got this little handle that swings out once again, very similar to what we saw on the beam rifle. There's the hole for attaching the adapter into. You can do that. Oh no, not on either side. This, well, okay, it is on either side. This one seems like it'll attach it on like so. How about this one then? Actually, there is no information about this mystery hole right here, which was also present on this rifle as well. This here is the same hole. This attaches in the same way. So obviously this can attach onto something else in a slightly different sort of way, but not, it seems, with this particular kit. Now I will throw back a little bit to this right here. So all of the parts for the actual unit itself is on one runner, or one set of runners, I should say. All of the parts for the equipment loadout for this particular Gelgoog is on a set of 2 other runners. This is usually the obvious case when we're going to be seeing a recolor or a different variant of this kit come out soon with a whole different backpack and whole different weapon loadout. So that's exactly what I'd be expecting this right here to have something to do with. This weapon attaches on the exact same way we would have seen with the regular rifle. That is, you sandwich up the hands, slap it on in there, and then just attach it onto the Gelgoog, and this holds on extremely, extremely well, just like we would have seen. So seeing as this is a big weapon, it's got 2 handles, I might as well get this into a 2-handed pose. First off, I will mention the other mode that the shield does have. In order to have this in its stored mode, you just push out the beam little effects like so it is hollow inside. Then you just disassemble both halves, flip them around, attach them together again, and that is essentially what you get. There is a nice bit of a polycap ball joint inside of the wrist mounted part, so it does mean you can flare this out of the way of the shoulders, and it does hold on quite nice. As for getting that big old railgun into a 2-handed pose, it's super simple. You've got plenty of articulation up at the shoulders, nice range of movement at the handle at the front of the weapon. The wrists are good too, so it means that this all works seamlessly and perfectly. Sometimes when it comes to trying to get a 2-handed grip on big weapons with some gunpla, it can be next to impossible or really awkward and limited. This is not the case. It works out perfectly, and there's what it looks like in the end in a pose, looking ridiculously good. It's a big, nice weapon. Shame about the color inaccuracies on the lens section, but otherwise very, very nice and quite large too. So once again, when this is not in use, it's the exact same thing. Pop it off, pop that little adapter into the side of it, and it pops onto the back, just like so, out of the way and holds on tight. And this does look incredibly cool. It's big, massive, but mounts on perfectly well. So finally now onto the articulation, and this is the same exact plastic on plastic rock solid build we would have seen with the Seed Freedom lines so far. And everything on it is, well, essentially perfect, so let's get it tested. So as usual, testing out that usual pose, and this works out incredibly considering that this is a Gelgoog based design. We do have a bit of the usual kind of issues you'd see with a thicker suit like this, but not the same scale that we would have seen before. You could get a little bit more turn in and out pivot at the ankles, you could have a little bit more underneath that skirt, and you could also have a little bit more, well, fluid motion up the shoulders, where the shoulder armor and the upper arm kind of are a little bit hard to maneuver together at first. You'll get used to it, but you can end up pulling off the arm every now and then. But besides that, this is absolutely phenomenal. We've got some great posing potential here. The joints in general are all packing some serious range of motion, and they're all good and strong. Let's go through them all. So in usual mono-eye fashion, we do actually have a little bit of a sliding mechanism under here. So you just grab this little tab and that will move the eye side to side like that. This is simple enough to do, but I will mention it can be a little bit awkward to actually reach when the head itself is on. You can actually stick something in under there and move it side to side while it is attached, but it can be a little bit awkward. When it comes to the head, the usual kind of Xeon-esque limitations are here. So there's all the way down, all the way up, all the way to the left, and all the way to the right, mainly blocked by that bit round back. The shoulders are those beautiful Seed Freedom shoulders, which move out like so and up and down, so incredibly nicely designed. So when the arm is attached, it can move out and in ever so nicely, up and down at the shoulder joint itself. And of course, we've got the full rotation, the ball joint goings on there, The shoulder armor moves separate to the arm, which you need to do before moving the arm up, but it is still easy to yank the arm off. Next up, we have full rotation at the upper arm, double jointed bend at the elbow, and standard ball joint wrist. An extremely nicely designed ab design, so there is the forward and back, so that is quite good, as well as a very nice side to side pivot as well. That feels great, and we do have the full rotation all the way around here. A little bit of a ball joint down here as well, which gives you that nice ball joint wiggle. A very nice design here at the front skirting, so this part right here is separate and moves up and down. That does move it out of the way of the skirting armors, which come connected on the runner, but you can't separate them and they do not get loose. Side skirtings are on ball joints, so they move up and down like so. You can always angle them a little bit too, ever so slightly. One of the saddest aspects is we do have a fully locked in place paralyzed butt flap, so it does get in the way of the legs out to the back all of the time. Nice thrusters though. We also have a little bit of a simple dropping mechanism at the hips. That's the type that kind of rocks the hips back and forward and just kind of moves a simple dropping mechanism. So that's it. And when it comes to the kicks, there it is all the way up to the front, a little bit limited, extremely limited out to the back. And when it comes to the splits, not too bad at all. Full rotation at the upper leg. When it comes to the bend at the knee, we've got two joints, so that's joint the first, there's joint the second. This little section here is blocking a bigger bend, but I guess they decided to maintain the design instead of actually having a little bit more articulation. The foot itself does have a toe bend. This bit of armor can move down just like so, as well as back up. And I do take back one thing I said about it having not a great pivot side to side. Yeah, that is if you're just using the ball joint, but we also have another joint which slides this completely over. So that means you can actually bring this in quite a bit like that. It just doesn't happen very fluidly when you're just trying to move the leg. You have to make sure to get in there and get it moved. So as for the functional movement, when it is on the ground, it does not move to the back at all. There it is to the front, a little bit limited. Let's try and get that full side motion. That is not easy to do without actually just lifting the foot and getting right in there. So there it is from side all the way to side. So anyway, that right there is it for the review, and I really deliberated with myself about this right here. It was pretty tough to decide whether this was gold tier or platinum tier. Platinum tier would make this the 5th platinum tier Seed Freedom kit that just came out in a row, and gold tier I think would have completely been unfair entirely. So it just had to be platinum tier, and it is the 5th platinum tier Gundam Seed Freedom release. Going through the list, the only real downfall with this particular kit right here is the color accuracy. It is a little bit of a disappointment to some degree, especially in the same kind of way as the high-grade Rising Freedom. The backpack definitely does lack a lot of the colors that it does need, but the kit we do get in the end still looks absolutely fantastic, and if you didn't really know about these color inaccuracies, it wouldn't even be that noticeable. But what we do have color separation wise, design wise, detail wise, this thing looks absolutely phenomenal, especially if you're thinking about something like a Gelgoog or Zaku-esque design. These kits don't usually get this amount of love, so that makes this extra special and definitely makes up for those color inaccuracy discrepancies. When it comes to the accessories, this comes with some absolutely fantastic equipment and will not leave you wanting. The backpack is great, got some great articulation, the weapons are cool, expanding rifle up top. And speaking of rifles, we've got two, one small, one massive. The shield is a ridiculously unique design that is executed so well, and my only real gripe here is the lack of expressive hands, but that isn't really all that unusual. Lastly then, what does come to the articulation, for a bulky Gelgoog style design like this does what nothing has done before. This is phenomenal. Seriously, if you're a UC builder and you're looking at this right now, you must be green with jealousy that your Gelgoog can't touch this, not even close. Really needs an update. Pop on the weapons in the backpack and you get some dynamic, over-the-top, ridiculous poses. It doesn't do the greatest on the ground due to the heavy leg armor, but this is not a mobile suit that's gonna be walking around the place. Anyway, it is fantastic, highly recommended, especially if you love non-Gundam style designs. If you're looking to get one, I got mine through Hobby Link Japan, you can too. As always, thank you so much for watching, make sure to come back for more Gunpla reviews, and I'll see you next time. As always, this video right here would not have been possible without each and every single one of you guys, so thank you so much for watching, and as usual, special thanks to those of you who helped me out over on the channel memberships right here and on Patreon, including Abraxas, Caleb Engelhart, Dashil Marmion, Go Little Rockstar, Joe, or G59061, Tin Soldier YT, and Van Fawn.